Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we begin today a new Masechta Shevuos. It's Hashgacha Pratis that we're learning this Masechta in the days of Sfira as a preparation for the Yantiv of Shevuos. The Rebbe mentioned a few times that there's a minig to learn Masechta Shevuos during Sfira Saima. It also has 49 blat or 48 corresponding to Sfira Saima, although it's not minig Chabad. Minig Chabad is to learn Masechta Saita, but there was actually 1 year that on Erev Shevuos, the Rebbe made a hadron on the Masechta because of the minig of people to learn it during this time. And the name of the Masechta Shevuos, which means oaths, is connected to Shevuos because we learned this in the Gemara and Makkos not long ago that Matan Torah, the Eibishter had every year taken an oath that he will fulfill all of Torah. Mushba v'oimed mahar Sinai. And that's the name of the Masechta. It's speaking about various different kinds of oaths that a person makes in this world. And the ultimate oath is our commitment and oath to fulfill Torah. So as we'll see in this Masechta, we'll discuss different halachas of Shevuos. There's Shevuos Bitui, Shevuos Bekodnu, Shevuos Eidos, Shevuos Shav. All the details are coming in the Masechta. What's interesting though about the Masechta is that the subject of the Masechta, Shevuos, doesn't really begin until the third Perek, which is deep into the Masechta. Daf Yutes Amud Beis. Until there, the Masechta is going to discuss other subjects. In the first Perek, as we'll see, it's going to discuss halachis, other things about karbonis and the kaparis of the karbonis. We'll see a lot of different subjects. Interesting. As I Okay, let's begin. Sagt der Heilige Mishnah, Shevuos Shtayim Shehein Arba. Regarding the oaths that the Torah speaks about, and here as Rashi says, it's speaking specifically about the category of Shevuos that is called Shevuos Bitui, which is based on the Lashon of the Pasuk. When a person makes an oath, and he has an obligation to fulfill this oath, the Pasuk says, Shevuos Bitui Levate B'Sfasayim, that he expressed verbally that he's going to do so and so. So this Shevuah, that a person says, Shevuos Bitui, there are two that the Torah speaks about explicitly, but then Shehein Arba, which are other two cases that the Torah does not speak about explicitly. So what are they? As I mentioned, in the third Perek, the Mishnah there will talk about this, and that's the two that the Torah speaks about clearly is when a person speaks about the future. Lahetiv, laharai lahetiv, which means a person makes a Shevuah, I will eat this, or I will do this. That's something that's positive. Or in the negative, I will not eat. I will hold myself back. I will afflict myself. That's in the negative. But this is all future tense. And then Chazal darshan also that the Shehein Arba, that when a person makes a Shevuah about the past, achalti v'lo achalti, he talks about the past and he says, I ate or I did not eat. So there as well, this is a Shevuah that has to be true. And if it's false, then a person's over on the Shevuah's bitui. That's the Shehein Arba for the past.
What does bitui mean?
The word bitui means to express, utterance, an utterance, the person says, yeah. Sagt the Mishnah Vaiti Yediyas HaTumah, the awareness of a person that was Tameh. And this is a person, the reason why the Mishnah is bringing this here is because in the Parsha, when it speaks about the halacha of Shevuos, in the Torah, it says right there also the halacha of a person that's Tameh and goes into the Beis HaMikdash. So, a person that is aware that he's Tameh, and he goes into the Beis HaMikdash. So there's Shtayim, there's two that's explicitly in the Torah, Shehein Arba, and then it gets divided into another two cases which are not clearly in the Torah. Right? So the cases of Yediyas HaTumah that is clear in the Torah is a person that's b'sheigig, he walks into the Beis HaMikdash, or he eats from kachim that are tamei. Right. Second. And the arba that you learn out from this is when there's depends what it is exactly that the shaygig was. What is it that the person wasn't aware of? In the Torah, it says explicitly that the person wasn't aware of the fact that he's walking into the Beis HaMikdash, or that he's eating something of a carbon, which is kachim. Shehein Arba is a case where the person is aware that he's tamei, but he didn't realize where he's going. He didn't realize that this is the Beis Hamikdash, or he didn't realize that what he's eating is kachim. So that's not a case that the Torah explicitly speaks about. But we learn out from Sukkim that even in such a case where he knows he's tummy, but he just doesn't know where he is and what he's eating, that's another two cases that the halacha will also apply.
What does it make it for?
So again, there's two cases of the person that does not realize. No, he forgot that he's tamei, and then he either walks into the Beis Hamikdash or he eats from kachim. That's two cases that the Torah explicitly speaks about. V'nela mimenu v'hu tamei. That's what Rashi brings to the lashon the pasuk. He forgot that he's tamei. Shein arba is cases where he knows he's tamei, but he's walking into a place or in the Beis Hamikdash or he's eating from the kachim while he's tamei. Now the Mishnah uses.
No, he went there.
Yeah, correct. Now the Mishnah uses here the term of yidiyah isatoma, even though seemingly the whole point here is the fact that he forgot. What's the lashon of the awareness of his toma? Because, as we'll see in the continuation of the Mishnah, there's a unique halacha regarding the case of tuma that a person has to bring a carbon for being over b'sheigig on this. That only when there's a yidiyah, when he was aware that he was tamei, and then he forgot, then there's the carbon that he brings. If this person was over b'sheigig and he never had that yidiyah in the beginning, he never realized that he was tamei, then there's no carbon. It's all learned from Sukkim that there has to be a yidiyah in the beginning. Okay, now what's also similar about Shevuos and Yidiyas Atuma, as Rashi brings here, is that both of them bring a similar kind of carbon. This is a carbon that's called a carbon Oila V'Yored, a carbon that goes up and down. What does it mean up and down? It depends. If a person is rich, then he brings an animal. If a person is poor, he brings a bird. If he's even poorer, he brings flour, a carbon mincha. So therefore it's called Oila V'Yored by both of these cases. Okay, now since the Mishnah brought both of these cases that are related to each other, the concept of shtayim that are explicit in the Torah, shehein arba that are another two that are not explicit in the Torah, so it brings other cases where you also find shtayim shehein arba. Arba yitzias hashabbos. Yitzias hashabbos, that is the cases of a person carrying out on Shabbos. So this is speaking about carrying from the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus HaRabba. And Rashi brings, this is learned from what it says, Vayaviro kol b'machne, that Moshe Rabbeinu said that they should let everyone know that al yetzu ish mim kaimai, that you should not on Shabbos, you should not carry out, which means not to carry from the Rishus HaYachid, from a private domain to a public domain. That's mefurish in the Torah. So there's shtayim. There's two examples for this. What are the two examples? Either the person is inside and he picks up an object inside the house and he stretches his hand out and places it down outside. Or the case of a person that's outside and he stretches his hand in to the house and takes the object from inside and brings it out. And then even if he doesn't put it down, even just holding it in his hands, he'll be chayiv because the person is standing over there in that place outside, he'll be chayiv. So these are the cases of shtayim that are based on what it says in the Torah explicitly, don't take out. Right? The Mishnah in the beginning of Shabbos speaks about this. There it speaks about the ani that's outside and the balabayis that's inside. Shehein arba, what is the arba? That not only are you chayiv for yitziyos, which is to take out, but also the same would be another two cases when you're carrying in, whether the person inside is taking his hand out and bringing it in, or the ani outside is putting something inside. Another case with the shtayim shein arba maris negoyim, the different shades of colors that there are for the negoyim. This week's parsha. Shnayim, there are the two colors that it says clearly in the Torah, that there's the se'es and the lashon of the pasuk, no se'es, sapachas, oy beheres. So the se'es and beheres refers to the two very white shades of colors that are clear in the Torah. Shein arba, which are others that we learn out from it, that's not the two that are mefurish in the Torah, but that are tailed, that are similar and have less of a whiteness to them. As the Gemara will say the details about this, that there's another two colors as well. Okay, now the Mishnah here will focus primarily on the second case that the Mishnah spoke about. That's Yidiyas Atuma Shtayim Shein Arba, a person that was Tamei and walked into the Beis Hamikdash or ate kachim while he's Tamei. So the Mishnah, Es sheyesh ba Yidiyah betchila v'Yidiyah b'seif. If it's a case where this person had awareness of his Tumah in the beginning, and in the end, afterwards, he remembered that he was Tamei, but v'helam ben time, in between, he wasn't aware what he was doing. He forgot about the Tumah. In such a case, that's when you bring the carbon chatas, and specifically this carbon which is called oila v'yored is mentioned for a poor, for a rich person, it goes up and it goes down. However, yesh b'yidiyah b'tchila vein b'yidiyah b'seif. If the person had awareness in the beginning that he was tamei and he forgot, and that's why he went into the Beis Hamikdash, but then later in the end there's no yidiyah b'seif. He doesn't remember, he didn't realize that he did this avera. So what kapara does this person have? He doesn't remember, so the carbon, he doesn't bring a carbon. So the Mishnah says, soir hanasa b'fnim, the goat that's brought in Yom Kippur, and which goat? The goat that the blood of it is brought inside the Beis Hamikdash. It's actually brought into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and the blood is sprayed there, and it's also sprayed on the pareiches and on the mizbeach inside. V'yom HaKippurim, and Yom HaKippurim Toila will suspend any punishment for this avera, that it'll, in other words, it'll partially be mechaper, and then if the person that does have an awareness that he did this avera, then v'yavi ba'oila v'yored, then he can bring the carbon oila v'yored, the carbon chatos. But until he brings the carbon oila v'yored, this carbon chatos, the soir hanas b'fnim, and Yom Kippur is mechaper for the person. So Rashi explains, even though this avera is b'sheigig, and the person is not even aware that he did this avera, but nevertheless the person needs a kapara, and a person has to be dayik for any possibility of an avera that he did b'sheigig, even if he's not aware of what that avera, he doesn't even know what the avera is. And Yom Kippur, the soir and Yom Kippur is mechaper. Now another case, if the person was tamei, now ein ba yidiyah b'tchila, he wasn't aware in the beginning that he was tamei, and he walked into the Beis Hamikdash, and he wasn't aware that he's tamei. But then afterwards he found out that he was tamei when he walked into the Beis Hamikdash. So in such a case, the person can't bring a carbon to be mechaper for himself. And here in this case, it'll never be possible for him to bring a carbon because he didn't have that yidiyah b'tchila, and that's not changing. So soir hanasa b'chutz, there's another goat in the Beis Hamikdash on Yom Kippur. The soir hanasa b'chutz v'yom HaKippurim mechaper. The goat that is brought outside, this is a goat that is part of the carbon musaf on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, there's actually three seirim. There's the two seirim that we know of usually that were brought together. One soir, the kohen takes in and brings in b'fnim, and the blood is sprayed inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And then there's the soir that's called the soir HaMishtaleach, that's sent to the Azazel, that's thrown down the mountain of the Azazel. And then there's a third soir that the Mishnah is talking about here, which is a goat that was brought part of the karbanis musif on Yom Kippur, and it's also called a carbon chatos. So why is it called a carbon chatos? What is it coming to atone for? For this case, when the person walked into the Beis Hamikdash and he was tamei, and he didn't have that awareness in the beginning, and therefore he can't bring a carbon for that. So therefore this soir hanasa b'chutz, that's part of the musif, and the Yom HaKippurim and Yom Kippur mechaper. They're mechaper for this tumah. How do we know this? Shanema, the pasuk says, mulvad chatas HaKippurim, that there's a seir izim echad that you bring for a chatos, and that's besides a chatos HaKippurim. So what does this mean? This pasuk over here is speaking about both chatos. There's the seirism that's brought inside, besides the chatos HaKippurim that's brought outside. Or maybe the other way around. Besides the chatas HaKippurim that's brought outside, inside is the one that you bring outside. But in the same pasuk, it's comparing these two: the soir, the goat that's brought inside, and the goat that's part of the musif that's brought outside. So therefore, we compare and say al mashazem mechaper zem mechaper. These two goats, they're both coming to be mechaper on a similar thing, and that is ma pnimi, just like the goat that the kohen takes inside and the kohen gadol, and the blood is sprayed inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Ein mechaper, what is it coming to atone for? Ella al davar sheyesh ba yidiyah. It's coming to atone for something where there's a yidiyah, there's the awareness of the person. Right? As the Mishnah said, that this is the one that's mechaper for the case where he had a yidiyah in the beginning, but he has no yidiyah in the end. Afachitzain, so to the goat that's brought on Yom Kippur, part of the musaf, outside, it's also mechaper regarding a similar aveda, this aveda of tumah, but over here in a case where the person did not have a yediyah, he did not have the awareness in the beginning about this tumah, even though later he did find out about it. So it's even though it's not exactly the same, but it's similar. They're both becoming to be mechaper on this aveda of tumah in the Beis Hamikdash, whether in a case where he did not have an awareness in the beginning about it, or he did not have an awareness in the end about it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, today, where the concept of Tumah, Tahara is not something that we live with on a regular basis. But in the times of the Gemara, this whole thing about Tumah and Tahara was like a major, major thing. And a person to walk into the Beis HaMikdash and he wasn't aware, Bichlal, that he became Tameh was a real possibility. That a person touched something and he didn't realize, Bichlal, and he walks into the Beis HaMikdash and he's Tameh. So here the Mishnah is saying that the Torah gives for this, the kapara, for such a kind of case. Okay, now another case, Dr. Mishnah, Va'al she'ein bo yidiyah loy b'tchila v'loy b'seif. A third example of a person that walked into the Beis HaMikdash and he's Tameh. He wasn't aware of it, not before that he was Tameh. He has no awareness later on. It's something that happened which is completely no awareness at all about this. Which carbon is mechaper for this? Not Yom Kippur. There's another carbon that's mechaper for this. Seirei regalim v'seirei rosh chodashim mechaprin. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So on every Yom Tiv and on every Rosh Chodesh, there's a carbon musif. Part of the musif is a side, is a goat that's a chatas. What is this chatas coming to be mechaper for? On every Yom Tiv, on every Rosh Chodesh. It's coming to be mechaper for this, that a person walked into the Beis HaMikdash when he was Tameh, and he had zero awareness about this happening. Not before and not after. Rab Shimon says that for this, it's the carbons, the goat, which is a chatas, the musif of Yom Tiv is mechaper for this. Avaloi sirei rosh chodashim. The carbon chatas, the goat of Rosh Chodesh, that's not what it's mechaper on. The fact that every Rosh Chodesh there is a goat as a chatos. What is that a kapara for? Also for the union of Tumah, but for something else. Ala toir she'achal es hatameh. For a person that he is toir and he eats from kachim that is tameh. So it's a mechaper on something else.
What's the problem with that?
No problem. Well, there's a issue. He's not allowed to eat the kachim when it's tameh, right? Okay, that's the kapara of Rosh Chodesh. Okay, now this is, what are we talking about over here? This is Rabbi Yehuda. We had Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, and Rab Shimon. Now the Gemara brings another opinion. Rab Meir says, Kol ha'seirin, all of the goats that we spoke about that are brought for a kapara, kaparos and shava, their kapara is the same. So in other words, what he's speaking about is all the seirim of the musafim. Right? He's not talking about that special, unique sire that's brought Yom Kippur. That is the two goats. You have the sire that goes inside, and the blood is sprayed inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There is the sire, a goat that's brought as a carbon musaf. There's a carbon musaf on Yom Kippur, carbon musaf on every Yom Tiv, and a carbon musaf on every Rosh Chodesh. So Rab Meir says all these goats that are brought as a musaf, kaparas and shaveh. There are chatas, there are an atonement, and their atonement is all for the same thing. Al tumas mikdash v'kadashav. On the tumah of the Beis HaMikdash, when a person walked in and he didn't know that he was tamei, and on also eating from kachim when it's tamei. So on all, they're all mechaper on all of them. It's all one thing. Besides, actually, one case, the case that was mentioned before, that the soy on Yom Kippur that's brought b'fnim, and that is mechaper on a case where the person did have an awareness in the beginning. And then he forgot, and he didn't remember later on. That's mechaper the soy anasa b'fnim. That Rab Meir is not going on that. He's talking about everything besides that regarding all the seirim of musif. So the 3 points that we mentioned, whether there was a no yediyah in the beginning and a yediyah in the end, or no yediyah at all, or a person that ate from kachim when it's tameh, all these 3 averes of tumeh, the 3 seirim of musaf, they're all mechaper on all of them. Okay, now the Gemara brings back Rab Shimon's opinion because it wants to discuss something about his opinion. Rab Shimon would say, as mentioned before, his opinion that the goat, the carbon chatas of Rosh Chodesh, mechaper malatar shachal asatame. That's a kapara for a person that's tired that eats the kachim while it's tameh. The shoulder golim, the carbon chatas of every Yom Tiv, mechaprim, that's a kapara for one that walked into the Beis HaMikdash when he's tameh. But which case? Al she'ein ba yediyah loy b'tchila v'loy b'seif. Person that walked in and he was tameh and he had no idea, not before and not after. And then V'shal Yom HaKippurim, the carbon chatos, the soil of the chatos of the musaf of Yom Kippur, mechaper al she'em b'yidiyah b'tchila, it's mechaper for the person that didn't realize, didn't have any awareness in the beginning, aval yesh b'yidiyah b'sayf. But in the end, he doesn't have an awareness, and for this, he can't bring his own personal carbon chatos, and this carbon musaf of Yom Kippur is mechaper. So it's, each one of them is being mechaper for a similar thing, for an inyan of tumah, but for a different case. So now Amrullah, the Chachamim asked Rab Shimon, according to your opinion, Ma'u sheyikrevu zeh bazeh. Would it be possible to use a carbon of one for another? Which means as follows: what would happen in a case where a person designated there was an animal that was designated for the carbon of Yom Kippur, and then it got lost. So they brought a different animal as the carbon of Yom Kippur. Now they found that animal that was lost. Now they want to use that animal that was designated for the carbon of Yom Kippur to bring it on for a musaf of Yom Tiv. Could you take from one for the other? So he answered, Amar lehen, Rab Shimon said, Yikrevu, yes, you could. You could take from the carbon musaf of Yom Kippur, and then if you didn't use it for Yom Kippur, use it for Yom Tiv musaf, or for the Rosh Chodesh musaf, and the same thing, vice versa. Amrullah, so the Chacham said to him, how could you use one for the other? According to your opinion, the atonement of one is not the same as the other. How could you use the carbon that was designated for one for another? That's the halacha always by every carbon. If a person designates a carbon for one Aveda, he can't then change it and use it for a different one. It's only to be used for that. So over here, how could you use one for the other? But Rab Shimon said, no, kulon boin lechaper al tumas mikdash v'kedusha. There is a similarity. They're all coming to be mechaper for a similar thing. For a tumah of the person in relation to the Beis HaMikdash or in relation to the carbon, kachim, that he ate from it. So since they're similar, you can use one for the other. Another opinion the Mishnah brings here about the kapara of these karbonis musaf that we see. The Torah says that the karbonis musaf of Kippur, Yantif, and Shchaydish, that there's a chatos and it's coming to be mechaper. So there's another opinion here exactly what the kapara is. Rab Shimon ben Yehuda ben Mishmai, Rab Shimon ben Yehuda said in the name of Rab Shimon that the way it works is as follows: the goat that's brought as a chatos on the musaf of Rosh Chodesh, mechaprin al ator shachalas atame. That's a kapara for a person that was tired that ate from kachim when it's tamei. Now meisif alein shel regalim, the carbon of the musaf of every Yom Tiv is mechaper on this, but it adds more. Shemechaperin al tar shachalas atame. It's mechaper also on this for a person that's tired that ate from kachim when it's tamei. And also it adds ve'al she'ein ba yidiyah lo b'tchila v'lo b'sayf. And also for the person that walked into the Beis HaMikdash and he had zero awareness about this, not at the beginning and not afterwards. Right. So the point, as you see, Rab Shimon is saying, is that it adds. The soil of a yontif is more powerful than the soil of every Rosh Chodesh. Every Rosh Chodesh is only mechaper for a person that eats from the kachim that's tamei. This is mechaper on that, and it adds more, also for walking into the Beis HaMikdash with no awareness. And then Meisuf Alein Shal Yom Kippurim, the carbon chatas and the musaf of Yom Kippur is mechaper on all of that, and it adds even more because it's more powerful. It's Yom Kippur. Shehei mechaperin. Or lashon yachid shehu mechaper, because we're speaking about one goat here of the musaf of Yom Kippur. Shehu mechaper al atoir she'achal es hatamei, like Rosh Chodesh, it's mechaper on a person that's tired that eats from kachim when it's tamei, and also b'al she'em b'yediyah lo b'tchila v'lo b'sayf. It's also mechaper the same kapara as Yom Tiv when he walked in with no awareness at all, and also it adds ve'al she'em b'yediyah b'tchila when he had no awareness in the beginning of a yesh b'yediyah b'sayf, but then later he finds out about it, and here he can't bring his own carbon chatos. This side of Yom Kippur is mechaper for this. Okay, so now this is the opinion, the way Rab Shimon ben Yehuda heard it from Rab Shimon. Now on this, the Mishnah brings that they asked him the same shaila, and he gave basically a similar answer to before. So they asked him the shaila, so can you bring one from Yom Kippur to bring it on the musaf of Yom Tiv, or from Yom Tiv on Yom Kippur? Amar lahem. So Rab Shimon answered, hey, you're allowed, you can bring from one for the other. Amrullah, so they asked him, how is this? How could you bring from one on the other? Yeah, it would make sense to say that to take the carbon chatas that was designated for Yom Kippur, that's mechaper on all three scenarios of Tumah, that you could use that then for Rosh Chodesh, or for Yontif, or for Rish Chodesh, which is mechaper on one of them, because you're taking a carbon that's designated that includes this avera that it's mechaper for, that you're going to be using it now for Rish Chodesh. Aval, but in the opposite though, how would you be able to take the carbon chatas of Rish Chodesh, which is mechaper only on a person that was tired, that ate from kachim that's tameh? Now you want to use it for Yom Kippur, that has to have much more of a kapara. L'chaper kapara she'ein shalat. It's going to now have to be mechaper for something that it wasn't designated at all for, because it's the Yom Kippur includes even more. So Amalem, Rav Shimon answers, Kulon, Boin, Lachaper, Al Tumas, Mikdash, Kedashah. There's a similarity because they're all coming to be Machaper on the same point. On a person that's Tameh and walking to the base of Mikdash when he's Tameh, or eats from Kachim that's Tameh. So therefore, they're similar enough that you could use from one for the other. Okay, another case the Mishnah continues, and here this is not a machlokes, this is another halacha. Va'al Zadain, Tumas, Mikdash, Kedashah. A person that deliberately walked into the base of Mikdash when he's Tameh or ate from Kachim. What's the kapara for this? So this is speaking about a case where the person didn't get a proper hasra. When the person gets hasra, so then there's malchus. So the malchus, as we learned in the previous mesechta, that's the kapara. But in a case where there's no malchus and there's no hasra, so what's the kapara for this? Soir hanase bifnim v'yoyim akipurim mechaprim. So that goat mentioned before that is brought, the blood of it is brought inside the kodesh hakadoshim, and Yom Kippur is mechaper for this. Al shara averis shebetayre. Now, on any other averis that a person did, that there is no particular punishment that's going to bring his kapara. Whether it's akalois, vachamurais, lighter averis, more severe averis, azadainis, vashigogis, he did it deliberately or by mistake. Hoida, veloy hoida, an avera that he's aware of, an avera that he's not aware of. Asay, veloy sese, whether it's a mitzvah asay or a loy sese, or even more, it's a case of krisus and Mrs. Bezdin. It's a case where there's kadis and Mrs. Bezdin. But in a case where he didn't get the warning and he doesn't get that misa, soir amishtaleyach machaper. That goat, that second goat that was brought together with the goat that's lahashem. That's then brought into the blood is shechted and brought into the kodesh hakadoshim. Then there's the second goat that's sent away to be thrown down from the azazel. That's machaper and all these averis. And the Mishnah adds to that, according to the first opinion here, that's Echad Yisraelim, Ve'echad Kainim, Ve'echad Kaim Meshuach. That this kapara of the Soir HaMishtalech, the Soir that goes to the Azazel, this is whether it's all Yidin, all Kainim, and even the Kaim Meshuach, the Kaim Gadol that's anointed, they all have the same kapara with this Soir HaMishtalech. Now, there is a distinction though. Ma Bein Yisraelim, L'Kainim, L'Kaim Meshuach. What is the difference between Yisraelim, Kainim, and the Kaim Meshuach? Ella, the difference is Shapar Mechaper ala Kainim al Tumas Mikdash Kedashav. There is a par, a bull that's or how do they translate par? Par is translated as bull, or it's translated as bull. Okay, there's a bull that's brought on Yom Kippur, and it's also the blood of this is also brought inside. And this is mechaper for the kainim on Tumas Mikdash Kedashav. So what we mentioned before regarding Yidden, that it's mechaper, the kapara of Tumas Mikdash Kedashav is with the soir, with the goat, but for the kainim though, the kapara is going to be with this par. Okay, the Gemara is going to learn it all out from Sukkim. This is the Tanakama. Rab Shimon,
also for the canyon for everybody, and that's it.
Yeah, but that's for other Avedas. For the other Avedas, the kapara is with the Soir HaMishtaleyach, specifically for the Aveda of Tumas Mikdash V'Kedashav, for the Tumah, by a Kayin, and the kapara for that is by the par. The par that you go inside, and not with the Soir that goes inside, like by all other. Rab Shimon says, Kishem Shadam HaSoir Hanasa B'Fnim Mechaper Al Yisrael. The blood of the goat that's taken inside the base of Mikdash and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that's mechaper for the Yidden, for the Tumah that there is, that Yid walked in with Tumah. Kach dam par mechaper ala kainim. So too the blood of this par is mechaper for the kainim, for the Tumah. So that detail he's agreeing to the Tanakama. But then he says, but similar also you say that kishem shevidui shel soir mishtaleach mechaper al Yisrael, just like we see that regarding the soir that's sent away, the Kayin confesses, and in the confession he says that the Eibusha should forgive for all Yidden for the Averis that they did. So too regarding the Kayanim, there's a special confession that the Kohen Gadol says for the Kohenim, Viduyoi shall par mechaper ala Kohenim. The Vidui, the confession that the Kohen says on the par, that's mechaper for all of the Averis of the Kohenim. So the Tanakh said that when it comes to all Averis, the side of Mishtaleach is mechaper for Yisraelim, for Kohenim, all equal. The only difference between the Yidden and the Kohenim is regarding Tumah. That the Kohenim had a separate par that was mechaper for them. Maybe it could be by the Kohenim, they're walking into the Beis HaMikdash so much more often, so they have that separate par that's mechaper for them, for that Tumah. But Rav Shimon says, no, even regarding all Averis, Kohenim are different than Yidden. The Kohenim, their kapara does not come from the side of Mishtaleach. Their kapara comes from the vidui of the Kohen Gadol on the par that he's bringing inside, inside that's being makriv, and the blood is brought inside the Kodesh HaKadosh.